Push the button, Max!
Hey folks, it's Rob from Rob's Movie Collection, and this episode, it's The Great Race from 1965. Now, I'm doing a usual episode per movie, but this one's a little bit different. Mike over at Gray 1951 is doing this thing where he does a movie for every year of his life, and I thought I could join in on that. I can do that. So I told him I'd do it, and this is my first episode on that. The year of my birth, the first year, The Great Race. It was directed by Blake Edwards, the great comedy director who made so many movies, including the Pink Panther series. The Great Race was based on an actual race from 1908, a race from New York to Paris. And this, it's just based on it. This really isn't like the actual story, so it was kind of the inspiration for it. But Blake Edwards apparently was a big fan of silent movies and the slapstick and, Chaplin, Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Laurel and Hardy, that sort of thing. So I really liked that. And this is an homage to those great silent movies and that kind of comedy. So the music is done by Henry Mancini, the great Henry Mancini, who did most of Blake Edwards' movies. He was kind of like the way John Williams is to Steven Spielberg these days. He was like that to Blake Edwards. Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon play two daredevils at the turn of the century, last turn of the century, 20th century, in the early 1900s, who are competing against each other in all these amazing feats at the time. It's very black and white type of, when I say that, I mean there's good guys and there's bad guys, and it's very just, no shades of gray, in other words. So you got Tony Curtis plays the great Leslie, and he's the good guy, and he's always dressed in white, and he's got a sparkle in his eyes and his teeth, and he's a very handsome guy. Jack Lemmon plays Professor Fate, twirling his mustache, always dressed in black, always evil, always trying to take down Leslie and cheating on everything, of course. He also plays a double role because he also plays Prince Frederick Hopnik in kind of a subplot that comes up later in the movie, this whole kingdom and people trying to take over the kingdom and from this prince. But it's a great dual role for Jack Lemmon. He does an awesome job as always. Great to see these guys together again after Some Like It Hot. And of course you got Natalie Wood. She plays Maggie Dubois. Beautiful as always. And, this is when I first saw Natalie Wood. And, of course, immediately fell in love with her. Just had this big crush on her. It's funny, in a lot of the trailers of that time, and even the documentaries of that time, they refer to her as the damsel in distress of the movie, but she's anything but. She plays a suffragette who's very independent and who does whatever she wants and goes to great lengths to show that she can do anything a man can do. That's part of her personality, and in fact, that's why she's in the Great Race in the first place. She actually gets in there and does things that any man can do and more. So she's really great. You also have Peter Falk as Max. He's Professor Fate, Jack Lemmon's henchman. That's where the whole push the button Max comes from. They say that a lot during the whole movie. And you also have Keenan Wynn as Hezekiah. He's with Tony Curtis's character. He's not a henchman, of course, because the Great Leslie's a good guy, but he's kind of his partner, or his man Friday, so to speak. And you got a bunch of co-stars. You have Vivian Vance from I Love Lucy. You've got Arthur O'Connell, who was also in another Blake Edwards movie, Operation Petticoat. You've got Larry Storch from F Troop fame, and you've also got Ross Martin from who was in the Wild Wild West. So you got a lot of different actors in this movie. It's really a big movie. The Great Race was one of those Channel 5 movies I've mentioned in some of my other videos. Channel 5 that they used to show on Channel 5 in Hollywood when I was a kid. Back in those days, before any kind of media, home media that you had, the movies would just come on and you'd have to sit and watch them when they were on. And that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because they would get the family together and you'd all sit together and enjoy it and kind of relate to each other. Believe it or not, even though you're watching a movie. Certainly a lot more than people do these days with their individual little devices. And we would watch it every time it would come on during the year. The only disappointing thing about it was that every time that they showed it, they kept cutting more and more in order to make room for more commercials. And that was always frustrating for me, because I would always remember these great funny scenes, and suddenly they wouldn't be there anymore. So I was very happy when I finally was able to get it on videotape, when those first started to come out, and of course later now on DVD. One of the great things, it is a race. They have these special cars in the movie. The great Leslie, Tony Curtis, he gets a beautiful white car called the Leslie Special in the movie. I wish I was more of a car guy, but even not being a car guy, I can tell what a beautiful, certainly aesthetic car this is. But my favorite is definitely goes to Professor Fate's car, the Hannibal 8. It's this crazy, goofy car that just does all these weird things in the movie. It has the button that Max pushes all the time.
Push the button, Max!
And it's got a little cannon. It's got this weird device in the front that heats up and melts snow, and it rises above the wheels, and you just have to see that. So it's really great. It's a really great little car there. And this movie also has a great pie fight scene. It's if you're going to do an homage to all the silent films, especially like Laurel and Hardy, you have to have a pie fight. It's a big pie fight scene at the end of near the end of the movie, and it's definitely worth it. This also has probably, in my opinion, one of the best or the best last shots in any movie. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because you have to watch it, but it's just hilarious. It's a great shot at the end. One of my favorite movies, certainly my favorite Blake Edwards movie of all, and that includes the Pink Panther movie, so that's saying a lot. It was not a big hit when it came out. In fact, it was considered a flop. The critics were very critical of it, as critics are. They were very critical of the slapstick nature of the humor and all that. I don't know, maybe, they just didn't get it. Maybe it was, 1965, it was a different time, it was, Vietnam and civil rights and just, a lot of other serious things going on in the country, and maybe they just weren't ready for kind of a throwback to the silent era and pie fights and such. But it has definitely got a following since then, and it's just a great movie. I highly recommend it, especially in these times that are getting so dark these days. It's nice to have a little kind of broad comedy like this. So I would definitely recommend it. The DVD itself is just one of these cases that kind of snaps open like that. I'm sure they've got this on Blu-ray by now. At least I hope so. I don't know if the Blu-ray has any more special features or anything. This one's just got digital transfer. That's actually from 2001. It's got a little documentary, but it's actually a behind-the-scenes documentary done at the time back in the 60s, and it really just kind of shows shots from behind the scene, and it has this goofy narrator, so there's not a lot in terms of how they made the movie, but that's to be expected. The older movies, they didn't really do that stuff as much. The main thing about it is actually the film itself. So, yeah, absolutely recommend it highly. And that's it. That's my first film for the first year of my life, 1965. Check out The Great Race if you haven't seen it. Feel free to leave comments and subscribe, please. And, yeah, as always, keep watching movies. All right. See ya.
Push the button, Max!